that if Congress people didn't have to go to Washington and they could just vote from home, they wouldn't be influenced by all those Washington lobbyists all the time. It would change the dynamic. That was obviously probably a person much younger than I, who sees, and if you think about it, you can think about it the opposite way. If you're in Washington, why can't you Skype or have, we've had several town hall meetings online and talk to your constituents. I mean, this is a huge district. It's 500-mile days, and I'm spending most of my time just driving from one place to the next. When we've got this technology that can connect us all kinds of interesting ways to deal with constituents or cross party lines or cross generational lines and talk to them.
You mentioned early on about when you were talking about balancing the budget. You mentioned that there needs to be some cutting and some spending and some revenue raising. Let's talk about the spending. Where would you spend taxpayer dollars?
I think you have to spend it to save money sometimes. If you, what I said, when you invest $1 in going after the Medicare cheats, you're spending money. If you spend $1, the work that I've been doing shows that if you spend $1 to educate young women about the new technologies in birth control, then you're going to save incredible amounts of money for Medicaid. So if you keep people out of the hospital, you're going to save them money, but you know, sometimes you have to spend money. I think right here in Ames, where we need to spend money, and in the land-grant universities and research universities, is we know that the research money that we spend it reproduces itself. You spend $1 of money in the land-grant universities, and you save $10 to $20. So because the research is going to fuel the future, it's going to create these products. It's going to, all the, you know, your parks, all the industrial parks that you're creating here, and creating products that you'll be able to put into incubators or out into these small towns. That's tremendous money. We know that if we invest there, but it's the first place people go in and take money because half the people can't imagine. They can't imagine. One of the best things my parents ever did for me was to certainly take me to see every state in the country before I graduated from high school. They used to take us to World's Fairs. I think I've been to every World's Fair in my lifetime. I don't think they even do them any longer. But the purpose of World's Fairs was so you could see the future. And I realized only recently, because sometimes I wonder, why are we coming to another one of these? But my parents made sure that I left small town Iowa not being afraid of change and not being afraid of the future. So that, but you have to be able to see the future in order to invest in the kind of research that we're doing at places like Iowa State. Because you have to be able to imagine products that don't exist yet. And you have to let people fail in places like Solyndra or places. You have to, you know, it doesn't have to be that big, and maybe there should have been more oversight, but you have to let people fail. I went to a college that didn't exist yet. And I learned over the 4 years that I was there, as the college was built and as I was part of creating what it was, that you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. So if you can allow people to fail in a way that people don't get hurt, then we can create all kinds of things that will make the future better. And I also think, you know, if that we need more lenses in Congress, and some people say, how can you change things? But there are two other people running for Congress who I've gotten to know. One of them is Tammy Duckworth, who has no legs. She's younger than I am, a woman, Illinois. She lost her legs in a helicopter accident in Iraq. And so I think that veteran perspective is a pretty important perspective, a female veteran with no legs. And then Val Deming, who I've gotten to know, is from Florida. Val is an African-American woman who was raised much differently than I, in much more humble circumstances, but she rose to become the police chief of Orlando, Florida, one of the largest police departments in the country, African-American woman in her early 50s. She's now running for Congress, so she's not the police chief right now. I think she still carries a gun with her. But, you know, those are... help her, yeah, well, I think you've heard probably, because you're with me most of the time, you've heard me say that I'm perfectly qualified to go to Congress because I've spent my life with adolescents and know how to deal with adolescents. I think she and Tammy both, you know, Tammy coming from the military, that perspective, and then certainly with Val in the police, heading a police force a significant police force in this country. That changes, you can't help but change Congress with these various lenses. And I think we need a younger lens as well. Most of the people in Congress have to depend on staff in order to use technology. At some point, we're going to have to let them run the place because, eventually you've got to turn over the reins. And I don't believe in term limits that are legislated, but I think that's the job of the electorate to make sure that you turn things over every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Vilsack, Steve King has been a very staunch defender of the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. And, he and I talked about that just last week when I interviewed him. One of an amendment he introduced to the Defense Appropriation Bill he was very proud of was barring gay marriages on military bases. Is the Federal Defense of Marriage Act something you would allow to stand, or is that something that should be repealed?
I don't believe in the Defense of Marriage Act. I don't support it. And Congressman King has tried to repeal the health care reform bill 33 times, and I think that his time could be much better spent making sure we have a farm bill, and I'd say the same thing about that. What he spends his time on are not things that really have anything to do with the economic circumstances of his district. And if you go through and look at all these things, they're just, why? He didn't pass the farm bill. So he's talking about military bases. If somebody's willing to give their life for their country, what difference does it make what their sexual orientation is? What difference does it make? For a lot of these things.
It makes a difference because it's right to, to have people.
To serve your country.
To serve
Right.
your country and to marry who you want to.
Right.
And do you think you come out as strongly as he does in, I always know what he believes. In your work with Planned Parenthood. And, I think people are more interested in these social issues because they're easy to understand and they're kind of touch-tone things that people, can really say, I believe in this, I don't believe in this.
Yeah, it's easy
And
to
so-
divide people with them.
Yeah.
But, if you, the work that I've been doing in reproductive health is more apt to reduce the number of abortions than anything that he's done. Because I'm trying to prevent pregnancies, unintended pregnancies, and I'm willing to sit down in these small towns and have that conversation with people. But that's not what people are talking about.
Okay, but and that's a good thing to do. But then in the same breath, can you say, and I am for reproductive rights, women in
Absolutely.
controlling their own bodies,
I've been
period,
saying it.
the end.
I've been saying
Okay,
it for the
keep
last,
saying it, yeah.
actually, I just assumed people knew, since I stood up publicly for the justices, I just assumed people knew where I stood on these issues, and I've been working in women's reproductive health for the last 3.5 years, but people don't bring it up. Partly it's because people are uncomfortable bringing it up. I mean, I've lived in rural Iowa my whole life. We don't talk about body parts we can't see. But I have been traipsing around talking to Rotarians and Kiwanians and business and professional women, and actually engaged the AAUW across the state to have community conversations about how we prevent unintended pregnancies. Really, I never once had to talk about abortion, because you don't have to talk about abortion if people can plan their families, because we can reduce that number. So I guess I
Stephen
assumed
King talks about it.
he does,
quite
because he wants to
readily.
divide us. I want to talk about the things that bring us together, because we don't get to move forward if we are just divided between the people who are what they call pro-life and pro-choice. I'm, by anybody's standards, I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-prevention, because we're going to save money that way, and because every young woman and every young man should have the opportunity at an education. That's been my whole life. It's working with adolescents, making sure they got through this time before the prefrontal cortex is completely developed. You get them through, and you get them a job, or you get them an education, so that they can stand on their own 2 feet. And that's not an issue. Shame on any of us if we let that issue divide us so that we're not concentrating on keeping our kids safe. And when I was at Iowa State University, and I'd come up here every semester and talk to students, and they said, I'd say, what should I be talking to your parents about? You should be telling them that we came to college without the tools that we needed to be safe in our relationships. So that's the work that I was doing. But people don't talk to me about that. What people talked about for the last 1.5 years as I've traveled around is that they've talked about wanting to be able to invite their children back to their hometowns. They want more people. My idea of repopulation is creating jobs and his idea of repopulation is saying that married people can't access birth control. I mean, he says things like that. There's nothing mainstream about that. There's really nothing very controversial about birth control anymore. But to say that is a little frightening to people of all ages, that married people maybe shouldn't be allowed to. That states should be able to ban birth control for everybody. So.
If I can, you guys have a minute. We're about 5 weeks out from the election. I think people are already starting.
She's counting, but he's counting.
We'll call it 6.
Okay.
And people are already starting to vote, I think. How do you like your chances? I mean, what do you have to do to make this happen?
Well, if you're looking at the numbers, and I'm more intuitive than, Jessica's the numbers person, but that this district, give or take a few points, is from the very beginning when I was looking at it, is 36 Republican, 27 Democrat, 37 Independent. So that should pretty much say it all, is that you can't win with the base of your party, neither one of us can. It has to be about the independents in the middle. And so, I don't have to go anywhere. I just am. I know he thinks I'm a closet something or other, I don't know. But I just am who I am. I've never been able to be anybody else. I'm a small town person. You don't become the first lady of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, if you're some radical. You just don't. You don't. You don't get to teach their kids. You don't get to, do the cancer daffodils or be on the symphony board in a small town if you have some hidden agenda. I just can't help it that I am who I am. And I'm just pretty middle of the road. I teach middle school. I lived on Main Street my whole life. And those may sound, that just is what it is. So that's who I am. And so I'm going to appeal to those people right there who are the people I've lived with my whole life. And I am making the case that it really has never mattered to me. It didn't matter to me when I was growing up in a small town. I literally came back and lived in a town where if I didn't have Republican friends, I wouldn't have any friends because there just aren't very many Democrats. People think somehow Orange City is different from Mount Pleasant. It's no different from Mount Pleasant. I've lived in a town all my life where they never elected a Democrat to the county board of supervisors. And I know how to get along, and I think Washington could take a lesson from that. So I'm appealing to those people in the middle, as well as the people in my base who.
And it seems like it's going to be a close race.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just wondering how you get to 51 rather than 49 by November 6th. Is there something different or special or anything you're going to do in the next 5-6 weeks?
I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing.
Keep plugging away.
I'm just going to keep doing it. And, I wouldn't have been able, I've had a lot of political experiences. And in my family, we've never been ahead until Election Day. So that's just the way it is. And I came into this knowing that was the way it is. But I came in with a deep inner confidence that I'd be able to make the case to people, that I could represent the people of this district, and that I would do it every day. And that I have communication skills that I think are necessary, again, at this particular time in history. You need somebody who can compromise, but you also need somebody who can explain. Because there are fewer farmers, there aren't as many spokespeople, and frankly, they don't have as much political clout, and they're going to need all the help they can get. And I don't just mean farmers, I mean rural people, the 750,000 people in this district, including the people of Ames who are dependent upon Iowa State University, which is all about agriculture. So you have to have somebody who isn't alienating people half the time. You can't talk about the culture of agriculture today and want people to understand that farmers are stewards of their land, and then go out there on national television and start talking about raping children and taking them across state lines and forcing them to have abortions and then bringing them back and leaving them on the playground. I mean, what is that about? How can you make the case, the agriculture, how can you make that case and then say those things?
You've been, I think, criticized somewhat for maybe being too middle of the road, or not taking stands and saying, yeah, I'm for reproductive rights, and yeah, I would have voted for the Affordable Care Act.
I've said that every time anybody's asked. I've never not answered the questions, except when I really wanted people to listen first to me talk about economic opportunity, It's like, first let me talk about what my campaign is about. My campaign is about creating jobs in this district. I'm happy to talk about those things, and those are national issues, but I see my job as representing the people of this district, and they have told me they want their children to come back, and they want other people's children to come live in these small towns to enjoy, they need economic opportunity. So my campaign is about the economic part of this, and my opponent will try to make it about the divisive social issues. It's just that that's not what the people of the district are talking to me about. And I'm happy to talk to you about the balanced budget or about the Affordable Care Act. I've answered those questions, and I can distinguish my views from the views of my president as well as my husband. I'm happy to do all of that. So I think he doesn't know quite else what to say about me. He's not even quite sure what to call me, So I can't help it that he can't handle those things.
If I could squeeze in one quick question about the Farm Bill. When I talked to Congressman King last week about voting on it after the election, and I said, are you reasonably sure something's going to happen after the election will get a bill passed? And he said, well, unless I think I can get a better deal in the new Congress, after the first of the year.
We need a farm bill now.
And that was the first that I had heard of even a consideration for waiting until the new Congress is seated in January.
Why would anybody believe him? If he
Yeah.
comes out here and says, I'm going to put an earmark in for Highway 20 and Highway 29, I'm going to take care of you, and then 2 hours later, after you've told the people, after you've put the earmark in, you put it in there, and 2 hours later he votes against it, and then he comes out and gets his picture taken when he didn't vote against it, and he'll sit on the stage and say to the legislators sitting next to him, I didn't vote for this.
But could you talk about just you mentioned the effects that are going to happen later this week on the farm. What would be the impacts if we waited until next year?
Well, they will scoop the money at the end of the year.
Yeah.
They're gonna, they're gonna take the money because that's why they didn't wanna pass the bill. If they pass the bill, the money's locked in and they can't have it.
Does
So-
it make things worse if we wait till the beginning of next year?
Every
for the
day.
New Congress?
Every day that you wait, because you know what, people feel really insecure. It's not just the farm bill. People aren't investing. I was up in O'Brien County and talking to a guy who was showing me in his gas station the blender pumps, and he said he had a friendly rival, and he said he wants to put in blender pumps, but he's not going to do it because he doesn't know what the future is in terms of the House left out the title of the bill that's like books,
Yeah.
the titles.
Yeah.
They left out the energy title. When I'm talking about creating the industry with the drop-in fuel, they left out biofuels. They haven't passed the production tax credit for wind, and we've seen the headlines in the paper, Siemens has laid off 300 people, and the others will be coming. We bring these people in, and we've started these industries, and now we're not going to support it. If you look at my energy bill, I've said, let's take it away from Congress. They can't do it. They can't do it. We need to take it out away from Congress, take it out of the political process. We need a 50-year energy strategy. We can't have this one-year extension. Nobody wants to invest. We have no transportation bill. I mean, I can go through the litany. We have no immigration reform bill. So the farmers in Northwest Iowa say, we want to do what's right, and we want to hire people who are legal, but we don't have the guidelines. We don't have the rules. People need rules. We don't have a transportation bill. We don't have an education bill. We don't have an immigration bill. We don't have an energy bill. We don't have an infrastructure bill. We don't have a jobs bill. We don't have a farm bill, a farm food and jobs bill. You get fined 25 cents at USDA if you don't call it the farm food and jobs.
We won't tell them.
Yeah. So, what has he done? That's, if I walked in here, the only thing I'd have to say, what has he done? He said, 10 years. What has he done? What has he done for the people of this district? Or for anything else, for that matter? Well, what has he done? He's voted inconsistently on wind and renewable fuels. He says he's a champion of all these things, but he's voted inconsistently, and we have all of the votes he's ever taken. So,
I hate to do this, but we only have like a few more minutes. I know we were late.
I know, yeah.
Got screwed up, so I apologize, but.
No, but it's 12:34, so, no, if you need to take off,
No, this has
that
been
is
a great
fine.
opportunity.
Any last questions or thoughts?
Oh, I could go on and on, it's fine.
I know, yeah, we could sit here and talk all day, yes, I know.
No, and I'd be happy to, but I take exception with the fact that I haven't, anybody who would say I haven't answered the questions, I answered the questions. But it is my campaign, and you know, and it is for me, and what the people told me is that this is what they wanted to talk about. So I just wanted, I went out and I talked to 100 people before I decided to run for Congress, and I asked all of them. I didn't say, would you vote for me? I just wanted to know what Congress did. You know, I've been in politics for a long time, and people don't talk about it, and we don't have media in Washington anymore covering what Congress does. So what do they do? So since I couldn't figure it out necessarily, because nobody seemed to know, even though many of them were people who were politically active, I decided, well, okay, well then I'm gonna create my own job description that isn't so dependent on what other people think. And then, you know, it doesn't matter who your party leader is or who the president is if you're representing the 750,000 people of your district, there are a lot of ways you can do that. So anyway, I appreciate you listening, and even listening to my, you know, and you can always go to my website and see all those others. I know Mike's had to listen to every press conference I've done for the last year and a half. He should be able to recite, give my stump speech, and also go through every policy that I've put out there for the last year.
Where are you gonna be on election night? Do you know?
I'm assuming I'm going to be right here.
In Ames?
This is where I live,
Okay.
right? I don't know. I hadn't thought that far.
Maybe you have to file away.
I just take
We
it
have 6 weeks,
one
so
day at a time.
5 weeks and 6 days.
I can't imagine where else I'd be than right here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we didn't have any plans to do
Okay. It's good for us.
Okay, yeah.
that.
yeah.
Easier.
You're gonna be in Sioux City, it's fun.
Well, I don't know. I guess I just, you know, I hadn't thought about it. I'm just taking it.
Always nice to be home, probably.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you need to vote.
Right, I do. I just have to figure out whether I'm going to vote early or not. I really want to vote
tomorrow,
early.
if you want to.
I know.
Just got it, the early.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts
You can-
tomorrow.
Oh,
I
so you can
believe.
send it in tomorrow? I mean, we
I
just,
think so.
Ballots go out tomorrow, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And, you know, we have a great early voter system here in Iowa that we all should be proud of. So I'm counting on that too.
I was kind of talked into it. I do like going to, you
Yeah.
feel like
I'm still gonna go on lunch.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. Oh, you feel like you should have a purple thing.
Then you can't complain about all the phone calls you're going to get between now and then.
All
Because
right.
once you vote, then they cross you off that list,
Right.
and then that helps us not have to call you.
Right.
Or you're the other side.
No
not
better
having to.
incentive to vote early.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
That's why I,
They
You'll
don't
be
shut
getting
the
all
ads
those
off
phone
your
calls
phone.
if you vote.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's,
It's really, really interesting.
we're
we
just
could-
down the street if you ever need us for anything, you know, we just walk.
Oh, well, that's good.
We're just 3 blocks away.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. It's hard to get to everything.